Welcome to Pressure Point. I'm Brad Newcombe. For most of us, being out of doors is one of the best ways to experience nature or to get in touch with our spirituality and to sort of ponder the mysteries of God and wonder about all the great questions of the universe. And camping can be just plain fun. It can be a time of companionship, community, but also a time to be by ourselves in our thoughts, in solitude. Well, with me are two people who have fallen in love with camping, and these guests are two people who have fallen in love in particular with church camping. And I'm happy to welcome Darren Hotte, who is the director of the follow-up program from Keats Camp, which is on Keats Island, called Up Ministries. That's at the Baptist Church. And Chris Burns, who is the co-chair of the Camp Fircom Program Committee, Camp Fircom being on Gambier Island in the Gulf Islands, and that's United Church Camp. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Okay, now, let's just say I've never been to camp in my life. Try to sell me on the idea.
Wow.
Go for it, Darren.
Well, you know, camp is such a different kind of experience. It's hard to describe, I think. And but if I was to talk to you and say, Brad, you know, I think you ought to come out to camp, I would say that I talk about some of the things that we do, like rock climbing, like windsurfing, and whatever. I talk about the music. I talk about those kinds of experiences, and also talk about the relationships that you're going to form at camp with your counselor, with the other kids in the cabin, that sort of thing. I talk about the music. I talk about just what kind of camp is about, and hopefully through that, I mean, then you kind of get a sense of what goes on. I mean, you know, what happens at camp, what a week at camp is like. Talk about, you know, the food and
And being
stuff.
out of doors, like I said. I mean,
Yep.
and I suppose then what you're talking about, there'd be a hook for many people. I mean, Chris?
Sure.
I think that it's true that when you try to describe camp, you go to the activities, the out trips and canoeing and rowing. And I think that is what draws people initially to camp, but I would just like to add that I would add to you, there's something indescribable, Brad. Once you actually do it, it's the relationships that you form and the sense that I'm okay no matter who I am is what that really pervades camping. That makes it fun. It makes people come back. You know, you might come for the rowing, but stay because you met this great people or whatever.
Well, okay, so then you're saying that there's an indescribable quality to camping. So what is the, can you describe this indescribable ingredient that takes place that makes it so different? Like, couldn't this happen in the city, or, I mean, where, like, what is the distinguishing characteristic?
It's a kind of community that you can't have in this, you know, in the city or from the home or anything like that, or through the churches. Even at church, it's a different kind of thing. It's much more intense. It's a time where I mean, there's no other place in the world where you sleep together with 10 people you don't know in a room. You tell all the stories late at night. You know, you do all that stuff. You're living together with a brand new group of people for a week or whatever it is.
Yeah, I remember when I went to camp first as a camper, lying on the top bunk and looking at the ceiling and thinking, did I really start the day at home? I felt like I had been there for so long because the experience is really intense. You're sharing every meal.
It's a different world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a different world. And I think that what you've said is true, that it can't be replaced in the city. Part of that is because of the different feeling you have when you're surrounded by trees and rocks. And it's a more simple life, especially a place like Camp Fircom is extremely rustic. And
quiet, hey?
Yeah, it's quiet.
Get out there and there's no noise, there's no traffic. You don't have a lot of airplanes. It's
Certainly
just,
no
it's
cellular
quiet.
phones.
Does it make a difference if you're from the
TVs.
city? Does it make a difference if you're from the city going to that as opposed to if you were growing up in a more rural or, you know, island environment? Do you think that makes a big difference, that it's so different for people from the city?
It might be less different for people in rural settings. That could be true, but the community is.
It's still
And
unique.
the
But now,
relationships, yeah.
the two of you both have church backgrounds in your early life, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. You both went to camps at a young age and fell in love with it. But you both are, well, liked it, but you both have leadership qualities and you're both outgoing. So it sounds like you're naturals for it. What about people that maybe wouldn't have a church background and would be a little shyer? Would
Darren,
they
are you
come away
outgoing?
with the same experience? I'm sorry, I'm making assumptions.
You know, we're on
here.
TV.
Right.
I guess you better be outgoing.
That's right.
I'm sorry, I made assumptions. I experienced you as outgoing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it could be a hard experience too for someone coming first time. My first experience at camp actually wasn't great.
Really? What happened?
Yeah. Well, it was a weekend long, and I was actually just a little bit younger than the camp itself, but they sent me along because my friends were a little older. And for some reason, I just didn't get involved, and I kind of stayed by myself, a bit of a loner, that sort of thing. And then it was a couple years after that. I didn't go back to camp for a few years. But then when I did, it was a friend of mine, my good friend Grant, that dragged me back to camp. And he said, "Oh, come on, you got to try it. We do all this stuff." And I went back, and then I was hooked. I ended up staying. I guess it was different from a weekend to a week. Maybe I formed some relationships that really stuck.
I think the age group thing's important too. One of the good things about camp is that suddenly you're surrounded by a whole bunch of people whose issues are going to be similar to yours. Like when you're 8 and your brother is maybe 10. I mean, you might have different issues, but here you are. You get to sleep in a cabin with 10 people, but they're all 8, and of course people develop at different paces and so on. But I think it's a unique opportunity for there to be a gathering of young people for whom the attention span or interest levels might be more similar than in the city or in school.
And able to sort of be themselves and interact and so on and develop in those kind of ways.
Yeah.
I actually worked at I never went to camp as a kid, but I ended up being a camp counselor a number of years ago in Ontario, and I won't mention the denomination, but it was the theme was horseback riding. So all the counselors had to learn to ride horses. So that's how I learned to ride a horse. Which was that was an experience in itself.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Leading all these kids
Please
out.
go to the slides.
Right. But anyways, and it was a great experience, and I understand what you mean. But there was one thing that happened in the sense that one of the counselors I know was maybe of a more, a different kind of theological background, shall we say, and used to every year, sort of toward the end, tell scary stories at nighttime in this cabin. And then what would happen is, and then offer to the kids that if they accepted Jesus, then that they would, be okay. And one of the kids said, "Oh, well, that happens every year." That sort of every year. And I just wonder, when you talk about church camps, what are the kind of religious programming? Because I didn't think that was a very healthy programming to do. That wasn't sanctioned by the camp, but one of the counselors was actually kind of doing that. So, and I know that there are some people who've had bad experiences religiously. It's one thing to be in nature and have friends. When you're having a church camp, what are the programs you offer that make a difference in people's lives?
Well, it really depends on the camps, their sort of view of God and religion in that. And, our 2 camps actually have a little bit different view.
Different.
Well, okay.
Okay, extremely different.
We, like at Keats, for instance, we really try to share in a way that's relevant to whatever the age group is, just the gospel of Jesus Christ and what that means, what Jesus can mean to us in our lives, what the Bible means, who God is, who we are, how that all works together. And so we're pretty upfront about that. We say that in our literature promotion stuff, that's what we're all about. So we do that. And we do that through music. We have original music that's written for Keats and for the Rise Up Ministry, which I'm a part of. And so we use those vehicles, Bible study, that sort of thing, to convey just the message of the gospel.
Okay, what about religious programming for you from Camp Fircom? Which yours is the Baptist, Darren, and you're the United Church, Chris.
Right. Well, Fircom has had to, let's say, defend its theology many times in the past because it is so understated. As a staff person at Camp Fircom, you will likely go the entire 8 weeks without ever hearing the words gospel of Jesus Christ all in the same sentence. And I think that, and this is an accusation that's leveled at the United Church as a whole, I think, this sort of don't say the G word thing, but at Fircom, one of our major ministries, in fact, it's in our mission statement, is to provide camping experiences for people who wouldn't otherwise have them. And in this case, particularly low-income people, people who are not likely to get a chance to go camping otherwise, many of them. Right off the bat, it seems unfair to provide subsidy and ways and means for people to come to camp, only to shove your idea of what the Bible can mean down their throats. So that sets a tone off the bat. But what I think is more important is that Fircom does not, in its brochures, for example, talk about this is where you're going to experience God. What does happen is that there's a really, really strong emphasis on accepting people for who they are. And for some people, that's a unique experience in their life. They're 11 years old. Nobody's ever said, you know what? You're just right the way you are. And I trust you to do this or that or this. I was telling Darren before we came on that in some ways Fircom is about telling people that we believe in them rather than asking them to believe in God. But if you believe that God is in people, then that's a deeply theological experience in itself.
Well, your two programs are sort of very different.
Sort of very different.
Sort of very different, exactly.
Did I say sort of very different?
Nice way to put it, Brad.
I think it's right. I think
Okay,
you're right.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, yeah, it's kind of startling, actually, almost. I mean, when you have them sort of side by side and you tell the stories, I mean, they're very different.
Yeah.
But we recognize something in each other because when we meet, we say, oh, you're a camp person.
Oh, yeah.
And right away,
Yeah.
even though the theologies are really different, I think we really share a commitment to children, to watching people push themselves maybe just a little bit past
Yeah.
their comfort zones and finding they can do it.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's risking singing in front of a group or rock climbing at your camp maybe, I think that risking and building community are the common things, and ultimately those are equally as powerful as the way that you happen to deliver your theology.
And I think like camping, whether it's a church camp or even a non-church camp, just a camp itself, and the experiences are vast and valuable, you know, in terms of understanding yourself and who you are.
In relation
they've
to
got a great thing
others.
going at Fircom with team building, and team initiatives and group dynamic stuff, and that's really valuable. That's a great thing happening there.
So where is camping headed? I mean, you have some experience. I mean, and you were part of the leaders, you know, from the Baptist and Interchurch positions. Where's camping headed?
Well, we covered this in the lobby, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Well,
Yeah.
you
Well,
go
I wasn't
ahead.
there. I wasn't there,
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
can tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forget you told each other.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. You know, I think, certainly as a camp that wants to spread the gospel, but even just as a camping program, we want people to come. We want to know what their needs are. We want to meet those needs. And so the question is, what are people's needs? Is that changing? Like when I was younger and I went to camp, I mean, is it different? I think, you know, maybe less kids are willing to get dirty at camp. Maybe they bring all their nice clothes instead of their dirty clothes. Maybe there's going to be less emphasis on the wilderness things. Maybe there's going to be more emphasis. I don't know. It's hard to say. One thing that we found at Keats, though, is that music is a very important part of what we do, and it's a way to reach and connect with young people in a way that we couldn't otherwise, it seems. Music is an integral part of our lives, as you know. I mean, it's everywhere. And it reflects the culture very accurately, too. So that's something that we use as a vehicle, as a bridge to get to people. So music is something that we really focus on and use a lot.
In fact, I have, Darren mentioned the Rise Up program. I have heard of that, and I've actually experienced it, and I think that, you know, kudos to them for...
The Rise Up, and let's just say what the Rise Up program is.
Rise Up Ministries is a follow-through ministry from Keats Camp. It started with Keats Camp. So we say follow-through because we really feel like in the summer we connect with kids and we have an obligation to carry that on after that, you know.
I mean, when you
So
talk about the intense experience, I mean, you talk about establishing these wonderful relationships and these intense experiences and people sort of finding themselves and meeting new people and so on. And that's it's more intense because you're separated from your normal environment, and then it's almost unreal. And
Oh,
then
it
comes
is,
to an
yeah.
end. And what a shattering experience to come to an end and then to never be connected with these people in any way
Oh,
again.
yeah.
I mean, that sounds almost, there'd be times when you might wish that maybe it never happened at all.
Oh, well, I wouldn't go that far. You asked us earlier
Yeah.
where we think camping is headed, and if I could just
Sure.
answer from my perspective.
Yeah.
Darren flagged the need to meet people's needs, and I believe that's certainly, you know, part of where camping's headed. My experience is that one thing that we all need, and campers no different from other people, is meaningful experiences, and just linking the future of the camp and the question of follow-through. I think that what camp is really about and where it's really headed is leadership development. I think those are really key words. And it's been my experience that while at camp you may not know what's going on for you on a conscious level, but it's in hindsight you look back and realize all kinds of skills and abilities and confidence that you have comes from having your leadership developed through these experiences of risking and so on. And so at Camp Fircom, we have a less structured follow through, but one of the things that happens on the so-called off season is that we start to train our leaders for the following summer. And so there's some continuity in terms of seeing old friends and staying connected, but the emphasis is on developing those leadership skills and continuing that between the actual camping seasons.
Okay, now who gets to these camps? I mean, what kind of kids, and where are people sort of invited? I mean, or from? I mean, there's a whole lot of people I can imagine might never get a chance to see them, and also how comfortable are they going to feel, when they get there? So, how are kids selected?
Well, it's kind of two questions there.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
where do the kids come from, and how do they feel when they get there?
Yeah. Okay. So we'll do the first one.
Where do they
first.
come from?
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the camp. It really does. So we get a lot of our kids through churches. We advertise, we do promos at churches, and hopefully kids will come out. We run ads in papers and stuff, and on TV. And
Is it expensive?
to go to camp?
Yeah.
Probably more expensive than Fircom.
No doubt. We get almost none of our kids from churches, from my understanding. We haven't had a chance to do as much market research as we'd like, but one of Camp Fircom's missions, as I mentioned, was the lower income families in the Lower Mainland. So we get a lot of referrals from the Ministry of Social Services, in other words, families who are on income assistance. So there's quite a bit of referral from the Social Services Ministry for our camps. And then word of mouth seems to be the absolutely most powerful.
It's kids bringing friends.
Bringing friends or cousins or their leader, all kinds of connections are made. And at a visitor's day just yesterday at our camp, we did a thing where people stood up when they first became involved, and we actually had people who were there who had been involved in the 30s. So camping does breed an incredible loyalty, and that word of mouth is really, I think, what draws people in.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, people have a good time, and then they pass that on. And
Oh, sure. Yeah, you have a good time. And I mean, like my friend that brought me to camp and dragged me back to camp.
And that was after your first initial experience,
Yeah.
which wasn't that great, right?
Yeah.
And so you both sound pretty optimistic that camping is keeping up with the needs of youth. Are you definite on that one?
It's not just youth. That's one thing just to point out, not to sideline the question, but
No, okay.
Both of our camps do offer camping for parents, and I think that's
For families to come
families,
together? Yeah, the whole
exactly.
family?
Well, and I say parents just because of the needs of our clientele, so to speak. We offer mums and kids camps, and do get a lot of single mothers who, for them, it's their 1 week of holiday in the whole year. So in terms of keeping up with the times, I think, everywhere you read, it's things about the changing family and the changing role of women, and, where are the kids getting their needs met. And in fact, I think camping could provide some real community for groups of people, especially in urban settings, that are feeling isolated or otherwise like it's too much for them type thing. It's a chance to get away and have some childcare. Someone else makes your meals and washes your dishes. And
So in other words, it's all ages.
Well.
Okay, so we'll go back to my question: Is it
keeping up?
Is it keeping up with the needs of all ages?
People.
Okay.
People, yeah.
Okay, I'll rephrase that
Would Michael
to include that group that I left out.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, we too have a single moms camp, a family camp like Fircom, but that's hard to know. It's almost impossible to know. I mean, the culture is changing so quickly.
What do you think, though?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think camping meets a need for people that nowhere else does. And so in some places it's not keeping up with the times at all, but it's meeting a need that no one else can. So, sort of, that's my crazy answer to.
I think it is. I think it is keeping up with the times because it's very simple in its basis. The idea is get people together who don't know each other at all, feed them fairly simple food, and give them an opportunity to take risks and stretch, and sing foolish songs and,
Yeah.
you know.
And I guess there's another thing.
Be
Most
outdoors.
kids are there, or certainly most people are there voluntarily. That makes a difference.
That's an interesting
Yeah.
question.
And are they there? Because I know that if I'm choosing where I'm going to spend my time and I'm not having to do my regular routine, I'm usually more open to everything. You know, I'm in a better space.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, if I haven't gone there voluntarily, it takes a few, it takes a little while.
Yeah.
You're talking about the campers? Or
Yeah, the campers, yeah.
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 Of course, especially when you're dealing with children, the question of free will is a little bit, I don't know, I'm sure there are children who kind of get sent to camp.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that could be tricky, but
And I guess the people that are hired on staff need to be aware of those kinds of issues, I guess,
Oh, of
don't
course,
they?
yeah.
And there's a lot of that happen. I mean, issues that deal with, when you're talking about children and youth particularly, that issues that they've brought from home, school, come out.
Kids bring 2 sets of luggage. It's the set that we unload and put on the truck, and it's the part that's inside them. And we make calls to social services regularly. Sadly enough, because it is that kind of place where kids come and they do feel safe.
yeah.
In relationship, in the setting, it's quiet. So sometimes they'll sit there and they don't have a TV to fill up their airspace. And so those issues do come out, and we believe at Keats that God is in the business of healing people. And that's one place where it starts. And I think because of that, it is important to have something whereby we can follow through on that commitment. Because again, I mean, that's an incredible commitment that we have to people when they, those kinds of things happen. Fircom, I'm sure it's the same.
Yeah.
Actually, not even just campers, I want to say staff too.
Yes, absolutely. The
Often.
feeling of safety in a camp, I think, is one of the reasons that so much can happen. It's sort of like a crash course in human potential. I mean, you can literally watch someone transform over the course of 7 days.
Which is a really wonderful thing, as you say.
Yeah.
But again, as
I
part
don't
of
mean
the staff,
night and day, I mean
but as
evolve.
part of the staff, you need to be prepared to deal with that, so that again,
Oh yeah.
that becomes in that critical moment an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, it's hard to attract qualified staff when it comes to some of the high level of need that we're talking about. We have wonderful staff, and they're very well qualified in terms of childcare and all kinds of things, music, lifeguarding, all that kind of stuff. But if you're talking about a disclosure about sexual abuse, for example, which could happen in the safety of camp, it's a challenge for staff, and for some it's a really upsetting challenge. So I don't think camp is all sort of, marshmallows around the fire. I think it's real life in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's a real microcosm of the world and the world's problems.
It's precisely because there is the time to have that kind of community, with its highs and lows, that means that you've got the marshmallows, but you've also got the time for other feelings and issues to come forward.
And
very
that,
real.
that is one way that camping is changing. I think, certainly when I went to camp, I was younger, there wasn't that kind of stuff that came out as much. So that's one thing that camping might be headed towards. This year we're doing criminal records checks for all of our staff. First time, and it's sort of sad that it's at that point where we have to do that, and that's one way that we're.
Well, I think that's actually
moving.
legislated, or it's going to be in the future.
Yeah.
So all volunteer organizations, especially it's volunteer organizations that have volunteers working with children. I believe it's being phased in, so it's not actually law until perhaps next year.
But again, those are good things for people who are interested in sending children who may not be affiliated with the church traditions and so on, or the history of a camp. To know that these kind of guidelines are in place as well.
Absolutely.
We need to mention also that you're with Camp Fircom, which is the United Church, and you're with Keats Camp, which is with the Baptist Church. But the Baptists and the United Church and all the other churches have many more camps. That you two
Absolutely.
your experience is very specifically rooted into one camp, so that you are not the only 2 camps in BC.
That's right.
And then if people are interested, there are camps all across the province, right?
For sure. And I think even within our camps, a lot of different denominations of people come. Certainly at Keats we have United Church people, or Pentecost, or Catholic.
Oh,
it's
so that it's not
broad.
just for your denomination, it's for anyone, people of no faith, people of different faiths, and so on. Well, how close is Keats and Fircom? Are they close by?
A couple donkeys in a boat, I think.
Well, Gambier is in Howe Sound, so if you were to traverse over to Horseshoe Bay and look out, you would be able to see both Bowen and then Gambier in the distance.
Do you ever have a kind of a general gathering of all the different camps? I mean, I know there's other. These are the Gulf Islands and the Sunshine Coast, and there's others. Does everybody ever all get together?
Well, the BC Camping Association connects everybody together, and so we would be at conferences together and that sort of thing, connect there. And so, yeah, it's kind of a little network of people, because doing camping is very different. And so we sort of, as Chris and I were talking in the lobby, I mean, this is automatically, you just go, oh, you're a camp person. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What do you guys do? Do you guys do this and this and this? And we have that connection, naturally. And so, we kind of all get together and do our weird camp things together.
See, I didn't know that. I mean, I really didn't know that. I mean, I was a camp counselor, but I guess I never really got sort of converted. No, I didn't have a conversion experience. It was the horseback riding.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right.
I went back.
Roll the video, man.
Right.
Brad on the horse.
But so I didn't become one of those sort of. Is that sort of like secret sort of society kind of thing or
Show them your
whatever?
tax
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it sounds like the mafia.
But I think that's
or something.
terrific, because I mean, clearly, I mean, the two of you just have exude this love of camping, church camping and stuff. And I think it's terrific. So I want to thank you both for being here and sharing that. And if people are interested, they can call those churches, can't they?
Absolutely.
Those
and
camps and those
Camps,
churches.
or the
Yeah.
camps.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
think there are 11 United Church camps throughout the province, and there's a real variety, and I'm sure this would be true in the Baptist Church, of what's offered and what the emphasis is, mostly based on geography. I mean, we're an island camp, so that sets certain tones, and so is Keats, but there are inland camps and all kinds of stuff, so people can look into that for sure.
And how many for you?
We have, I think, 3 Baptist camps in BC.
And just, we don't have a lot of time left, but just maybe if you could just sort of sum up in just a couple of sentences, sort of what it's meant to you personally to be part of a camp.
Well, camp has given me a place where I can explore my giftedness and find out who I am, find out what I'm about, try new things, try those crazy things that you just don't have the opportunity other places.
And you, Chris?
I think that camp has given me a better appreciation for differences and confidence.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Chris Burns and Darren Hotte, thank you both for being with me here on Pressure Point.
Thank you,
Thank
Brad.
you so much, Brad.
Thanks a lot. It's been great. I've been talking with Darren Hotte and Chris Burns about their love of church camping. Thanks for watching Pressure Point. I'm Brad Newcombe.
The preceding program was produced through the facilities of Rogers Community 4, Vancouver. We want to hear from you and invite you to leave your comments and suggestions on our 24-hour response line message machine. Please call 731-5812.